Question. When others are in misery and want to commiserate, I don't. But it seems there should be more I can do to help them. There is. Is there more I can do? Yep. Now, what we'll be covering here, I mean, one of the keys, and the nurses will naturally, you just got this in spades, okay? And you know what it is? It's compassion. You got compassion. You got a profession founded on compassion. You got compassion. There's no profession I know of more grounded in compassion. And why can you be compassionate? Because you're not hypocrites. You can be compassionate teachers, caregivers, mothers, because this paradigm teaches you, there but for the grace of God go I. All right? There but for the grace of God go I. So what does that mean to the person on the floor, wherever you are, wherever you're going? You too go outside in. You too, me too. Everybody goes outside in. Everybody. Okay, so you got no leg to stand on to be hypocritical when you go to care and serve and help and love. So you got love and care and compassion as your footing for what you do. And you do it out of there, and you do it out of there more better. If you do it out of there more resiliently, more strongly, you will find what you need to love and care. You will. It's already there for you, but you can have more of it. I'm that way too, but I can have more of that the less outside in I am. When I'm outside in, I hold back. I don't know. Should I say something? I hate it when they're doing that. What can I do? My head gets filled up of outside in reservations, insecurities, doubts. And those are what diminish your resilience. So you can become deeper resilience. That's what this whole conference is about. Deeper resilience, more feeling, more joy, more love, more compassion, more truth, more of what really works. You're going to see how to do what really works. And every time you see it, it'll be like, yes. You know, you realize, that's it, that's all I can see. It makes me stronger. Now, what makes you stronger, like these people are saying, they're speaking up more. They're more confident, they're more secure. They're more capable, like my wife tells me, she says, you know, what I just said to you, I've been wanting to say to you for 30 years. But I've never had the permission. You've never been ready to listen. And she said, I've been practicing this speech in the car, driving around town. How am I going to bring this up to him? How am I going to say this to him? So that it would work, because she knows truth works. And if it doesn't work, then you're not really, you're making adjustments. You guys know about this. This is not news to you. If you say it this way, like parenting. Parenting is repetition. You say it once, it doesn't work. You say it twice, you say it 50 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. You don't care. You're just seeing, and then you say things at 3, And then at 5, the kid's saying them back to you, and you're thinking, hey, I think some of that went in, right? You say it, you say it. There's no end to saying it because it's the truth, and you can't help yourself. But you're not looking for it to be received so much as you're looking for how to create with it deeper, different. If you can't do it this way, you can't do it that way, try another way. You're endlessly creative. Every single one of you are endlessly creative, infinitely flexible, mentally. Maybe not in your bodies, but your mind. You can think again and think again. And you have got more of that in you than what you now employ. Because there are places where you get stuck and just like the rest of us. But that's what it is. It's really simple. You go outside in, you get stuck. You see it, you make an adjustment. Somebody asked, what are some of the indicators, I think the question is, that you watch for to see if your group is tracking to measure the effectiveness of your training program? Well, one thing, they don't walk out. They pay for it. If you ask them to pay a fee, they write a check. They listen. They resonate with the message. If they're not resonating, like I'm watching and seeing, is any of this landing? You know, like I ask you guys, are you hearing me? Is this making sense? I'm wanting to hear questions like I'm making adjustments to see, are you tracking? If you're not tracking, I'm going to try to say it a different way. So I'm just saying the same thing I said yesterday, but I'm saying it in a new way, in a different way, a deeper way, using different examples. But again, repetition is, if there's just one truth, it's endlessly repackageable. So another question was, is thought, as I'm using it, the same as belief systems that have culminated from your life? Well, no. I'm saying belief is potentially, got a little something on my deal there, is outside in. Like, this is not a belief system. This is like, this is where belief systems are made. So it's not really a belief system, because there are places where you have dysfunctional belief systems or inadequate belief systems or limited belief systems. A belief system is, I'm saying, just one way to think about it. I don't mean to step on anybody's toes about their belief systems, but I'm just saying is that belief systems are when thinking becomes systematized. It's thought systems. Thought systems become systematized. They become things. Now, there are places but they're made of thought. And so I'm talking about the fundamental element of what they're made of. So like in chemistry, they have elements, right? And then you combine two elements, what do you have? What? Compound, right. So a compound is made up of elements, but we're looking at the elements and just trying to talk to the elements. The thought is an element. It's not a compound. It can be arranged to collectively create a belief system. But as an element, it's made up, belief systems are made up of thought. That's what they are, they're thought. And as such, if you understand them as such, they won't run away with you into prejudicial ideas or limited ideas or judgmental ideas or fearful ideas. So if you can see the relationship of thought to all belief systems, you'll be in safer territory. If the belief systems become in and of themselves what you don't see as thought, after a while you can be working for your belief systems rather than your belief systems working for you in a way. Or you can be subject to your belief systems. You'll be limited by your thinking. And as thinking, it's unlimited. Good question. I don't know the answer to what, someone see me at the break about what a win-win approach is. I don't really know what that means, whoever asked that question. If positive thinking is an outside-in strategy, how can we shift our understanding of it to inside out? It's just the insight of what a positive thinking strategy is. It's a limited way to think. Some of the most difficult patients I've ever had have been positive thinkers. I had a guy who wrote the book on positive thinking. He wrote several books on positive thinking, and he was just he was amazing. I don't think he heard a thing from my program. And we had some individual sessions, but he was so narrow-minded. He was such a positive. He would say, "Oh no, I can't think anymore. I got to take a nap," right? And he'd lay down in the session and take a nap because he was overwhelmed. Like he was working so hard. I never saw a person work so hard. His mind was just to be positive. He was trying so hard to be positive. He couldn't listen. He couldn't relax. He was so stressed out. But positive thinking as a strategy is something to do, right? Think about my example of my hospital when we said, "Oh, we've got the nothing to do program." And the guy said, "What? What do you mean nothing to do?" So, well, all those programs, all those 30 programs, because I knew as soon as you split thought from feeling, you create doing. You have to, because you're splitting. Then you have to create a remedy to fix the problem that you created. See what I mean? As soon as you split feeling from thought, you divide the world. You divide the universe, and you put yourself in it. You make what philosophers call duality. You make duality. We make duality, and then we try to resolve it. But we made it in the first place. There is no duality. So when we said to this CEO, "We've got the no doing program," he said, "Well, that is a relief." He said, "You know, I couldn't bear to buy one more resilience program that put one more second of work on my people." He said, "Every single resilience program they got to journal, they got to meditate, they got to practice, they got to do things. It's all got doing in it." And I said, "Well, of course it does. It has to have doing because it's in a mixed paradigm. And we don't have there's no doing required for how it already works. It already works this way. And people will catch on to it 1,000 times over. and self-correct, but it's not, there's nothing they have to do to make the truth already be the truth. The truth is the truth before they ever got started with it all. So they're just getting realigned with the truth. They don't have to create it, make it happen, figure it out, think it. I love this one. She says, don't need to answer this one, but I want to share it with you. Have you approached the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives? That's good. Yeah, you're talking about the, I don't know, that's a tough group there. So you've been told you have a degenerative and spinal cord, a demyelation of the spinal cord. And it looks like I believe it says a tumor as well. Have to wait 6 months to see if it grows. What? How does that process? Well, just like anything else. Now, I don't mean to demean that, but I'm saying that, so let's take a look right here. It's a good place. So you got, now in your workbooks, we've got the first diagram. I put some things in there just to kind of give you ideas. Now, I want to get to this diagram because this is such a beautiful little deal. There's a line on these diagrams, not on the first one, but on the second one and the third one. The third one with the big, that should be a red thing. Yeah, that big round red thing, that should be a red thing, and the line should be a red thing, but the printers didn't do it. So what I'm saying is there's a way that this works, there's a way we all function, but we sometimes in places we forget and we lose our resilience. So, and I mean no disrespect to anybody or any condition or any situation, any circumstance, any loss, anything. Life has physicality to it. Life has death in it. Life has disease in it. It has the unexpected in it. It has medical problems in it. And you all know about this. And they all happen to all of us. So, but in this case, what we're saying here is not unimportant to comprehend, and it's simple. It's not rocket science, but you put what I like for people to do is kind of get this in there. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. Kind of get this line in their mind's eye. So what we're saying is, to put it simply, there's a paradigm that determines where your feelings are coming from, moment to moment. It's always been true. It's been true throughout all of history. But if you look at history, you'll find it's been a history of what I would call, not unlike Semmelweis in his day, he saw throughout history there was some component that was killing mothers who were delivering. Little did he know, it was also killing people who were having surgeries. It was also killing people that had wounds. It was germs. So understanding what that was made life here today revolutionarily different. There's an understanding of how we function that will do the same for us again. If the way we all function is through thought. It's through thought, whether conscious or unconscious, is giving us our experience of life, moment to moment to moment. Now, but we forget that. We don't know it. We know it some places, but there are other places where we forget it. So, just to take the example here being asked, let's say, for example, let's say demyelation. That's a really big word. I don't want to misspell it to this group, because you all know how to spell that. I'll put oops. So DMYLEATION. Is that right? Yep. Demyelation, the sheath that covers the brain and spinal cord, deteriorating. God bless you. Now, what I'm saying is, fortunately for all of us, there's a link between the physical world, the world of, and our nature. There's a link, often missed, but we're going to get it up to speed here, that the world does not make us think about it. We think about, it's through thought that we think about the world. And it seems like a simple truth, but it really is a profound shift in the way we understand life, that life is a spiritual, psychological, if you will, experience, and it's not determined by the physical. Physical doesn't tell us what to think. The traffic, the children, the demyelation, whatever. You get this in your mind's eye. This will really help you, I believe. It's really helped me. That there's a line between how the paradigm is and how we forget about it, how we misunderstand it. So, and it's proven. You can look around, you can see this is all true already, what I'm saying, but we need to get a scientific appreciation for it, that the way I feel about my body, my condition, my circumstances, my mate, my children, my boss, my patients, is determined by the way I think in the moment. It's not coming from them. It's coming from the way I think about them. And that is a wonderful, powerful, beautiful truth that will more and more set you free of the misunderstanding that kills your resilience, that keeps you from being able to realize. So I'm not saying that demyelation isn't happening and that it's not happening to someone in this room, but I'm saying that how you think about it will be how you feel about that, how you experience it, what it means to you. This is where the meaning of it comes in for you. And the meaning of it, if it's the boss and you're you might say the victim of it. I don't mean that in any demeaning way whatsoever. I mean no demean about this at all. But I just mean to say, if it's telling you, seemingly, making you think about it, or making you feel, if it's making you feel about it in the way it is, without your thinking being involved, you're going to lose your resilience. if you see the truth of it, that you already now know, but I'm here to drive a stake in the ground about it, you'll see that how you feel about your demyelation is not coming from the demyelation. And you are free. You are free. Everybody in this room is free. Everybody in the world is free. But we just don't live like we're free. We live like we're missing something. We're hassled. We're compromised. We're taken advantage of. We're less than. It's time we accepted our freedom, and the responsibility for the way we feel. The way we feel, no one can take that away from you. Not demyelation, not a bully, not anything. The way you feel is fundamentally and absolutely rooted in thought. And your use of thought, the power of thought, is the way your use of that will determine 100% how you feel. And ain't that great? So screw old demyelation to make me think about it. It can't make me think about it. It can't make me feel what it wants me to feel. I have it, but it's not the boss of me. And I mean no disrespect by saying that to whoever asked this question. It's a wonderful question. But you get this line sorted, and everybody can do this. Like anytime you come up against anything, small, medium, or large, I recommend to people and coach people to get this line in their mind's eye. This line is the difference between reality and misunderstanding or illusion, or there is only one reality, and we're all in it, and we're all living in the feeling of our thinking because of the deep nature of how this works. And something so true about that is liberating over and over and over again, that'll set you free from the world. Okay. So, when we worked with this hospital system, lots of thoughts about the new computer system. Makes things much worse. So my job is, I've got this issue. Who in here hasn't been frustrated by a computer, right? I mean, don't you want to just strangle them sometimes? I'm sure there's probably many examples of people throwing them in the lake or flushing them down the toilet or whatever. I had a client who he bought a brand new computer. He had no experience with the computer whatsoever, but he got an inheritance check, and he went out and give me the best computer you got, and he went to the computer store and bought this. And that afternoon he started to work on it, and he ended up taking a baseball bat and completely and totally destroying this computer. Apparently, he thought his feelings were coming from the computer. Computers can't make you feel. It's your thinking about the computer. Now, we all see that. We all teach our kids that. We all know that. But it's really true, and there's something really liberating about that truth, something really profound about it, something very almost humorous about it sometimes, you know? But it's also scientific. And that's really cool to know. It's not just overcoming, like someone mentioned at the break. They said, well, you're talking about courage. People have courage. I said, well, is it courage? I was thinking about it. I thought, I don't think it's courage. I think it's just, because courage makes it sound like an individualized, overcoming, strong-willed, conquering, I've got courage, I could do it, you know, which you might think that way, and that might serve you, but still, there's something not scientific about that. It's kind of like some people are endowed with courage and others aren't. Some are weak links like me, or courage was handed out as sort of intermittently. A little more courage was dropped on some people than others. The rest of us are sheep, and then there's the sheepdog or the wolf. They've got the courage. The sheep, I don't think so. You know, you are equally endowed by these principles and how they work. There's no one who has any more or less power of thought than anybody else. It's a gift, and it's universal, and there's no exceptions to it. So thinking of it that way and understanding it that way has meant more lifetime learning for me, and I got out of thinking of other people as having more of something than what I had been given, or the converse of that, or the reverse of that, that other people were given less of what I've been given. It really completely and totally leveled the playing field. So I love that. I love just being able to not think, and you know what that did? It took away judgment. I had been taught to be judgmental. My parents did it. My profession did it. Now, in graduate school, we didn't call it judgmentalism. We called it diagnostics. You know, but you can see a diagnosis. You can see, this is a diagnosis. But you can see that diagnosis without judgmentalism in your heart, feeling in your heart about a condition, a circumstance, or situation. There's no condition or circumstance and situation that can make you think about it in the way it wants you to think. Your feeling, which is coming from your thinking, is your own privilege to experience things such as without feeling like the world can determine your thinking. Because it can't. And getting that ruled out is just the same as Semmelweis getting ruled out, childbed fever being caused by colds and fear and the atmosphere in the hospitals. There was an ignorance, and those ignorances caused people to kill one another. Good physicians, highly trained physicians, were carrying around death on their scalpels and killing people with it. I didn't know what they were doing. There was one physician who, when he read Semmelweis's paper, was a very badly written paper, but this physician realized it. He got so bummed out about how many people he had contributed to their death, he killed himself. He threw himself in front of a train, which broke Semmelweis's heart, because he wasn't saying that even though you had contributed unwisely to the demise of the people you cared for, that you were not innocent of it. He was just saying, look, it's a new day. There's something called germs, and you take them into account, different story. You don't take them into account, you're making things worse where you're hoping to make things better. So he made he had a vision of hope for the medical profession, and deservedly so. We wouldn't nearly be where we are today but for him. So it's not bad news that I bring. It's good news. It's great news, and it's important. And it means that you can do more with less, and create more of the healing, health and healing that you endeavor, with less stress and turmoil and less grind. That's not, the grind in your life isn't coming from it's coming from your grindy thinking. Who in here doesn't have grindy thinking? Who's got grindy thinking? Okay, yeah. Grindy, you know. So let me tell you a story. My wife, we went to hear a person, his name is Sidney Banks, who had this profound insight about all this. And he wasn't even in the medical profession. He wasn't even a professional. He was a welder. And he realized that someone said something to him, and it just knocked his socks off. And after that, he went from being a welder to being an author and a wise man. And I met him, and I heard him speak, and my wife and I kind of had to drag her along. She wasn't much interested in it, but she got interested in it, because we're driving home we heard him speak for a couple of days, and she says, oh man. I said, what? She said, my mind. I said, what do you mean? She said, it's going crazy. I said, it's so repetitive. I'm having repetitive thinking. I said, really? I said, have you ever seen your thinking this deeply before? And she said, no, I've never seen it. She said, I thought I was in better shape than this. I didn't realize what I got going on in here. I said, like what? She said, well, I'm thinking about a betrayal that a boyfriend did to me 10 years ago. I don't even know where he is now. Why am I thinking about that? And I said, I don't know. But she mentioned what it was. I thought to myself, well, I'm glad she's seeing this, because I've heard this story about 100 times about what he did. And she said, I'm thinking about it in the same way. She says, every single time I've ever thought about this, I've thought about it exactly the same way, and I feel exactly the same way about what he did. And she said, I don't know what to do with myself. So that's when I asked her, have you ever seen your thinking this deeply? And she said, no. And she said, then she did this process inside of herself. She thought, you know, I don't know how to think about this any different than I've already thought about it. I've been thinking about it 10 years, perfectly fine with me to think about it this way for 10 years. And so she says, I don't have anything else. Well, then she thought, well, what if it comes back? And then she thought, it probably will. I've been thinking about it this way for 10 years. Why wouldn't it come back? How do I keep it from coming back? She said, I have no idea. She thought, well, I don't know what to do about it. So she just it kind of made her pause. She got a kind of a sense of what's a person to do about this. So a few days later, this word kept coming to her. And this word was compassion. And she thought, and then it kind of came back. It was kind of a word that was articulating this sense she had. And then she thought, this better not have anything to do with that unfair thing that boyfriend did. Because that wasn't right, and he took advantage of me, and that's all I have to think about it. And then she said, it came back again, like compassion. She thought, well, why would I need compassion? She's arguing with herself. Why would I need compassion here? He was wrong. It was unfair. End of story. And then this thought popped up in her head. Well, he made a mistake. And then she thought, well, I make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. And she thought, why would I single out his mistake as being, why is he any different than me? She thought, he's not really. And that insight, she hasn't had that thought. That was probably 35 years ago. She hasn't had that thought since. Just popped it. What?
Now she does, because you brought it back up.
Well, see, and if she tells the story, it doesn't bring back the feeling of resentment, being taken advantage of, unfairness. She said it was unfair. That was what it was. That was unfair, and he shouldn't have done it. And didn't his parents teach him better? He should have known. She had all of her reasons. See, you have little reasons for your pain, your outside-in thinking. And you feel very comfortable rehearsing them to yourself. You don't realize that it's like you're sewing a little thread onto your casket, your own casket, your own mental illness. You're sewing a little thread. She was sewing the thread all those years, weaving the web of her own psychological pain and suffering, and it looked like it was coming from what had happened to her, but she didn't even know where he was, right? It was a memory. It wasn't It was the past. The past. Now, as to our, this is her, this is Valda that said that, she realized that the past is not capable of determining your feeling now. It's the way you think about the past now. It's happening in the moment. And it changed her reality. Inside out, that your feelings are coming from your thinking in the moment is reality. It's always been true. And always will be true. It'll be true 1,000 years from now, that people will be living in the feeling of their thinking. That's not going to change. And if you look around, if you just notice it, you'll realize it's happening all the time. But there are places where we just don't spot it as coming, that the feeling we're having is coming from our thinking about something. It looks like it's happening some other way. And we lose our freedom and our responsibility every time we think that. So we started to have insights and little liberations. It's kind of like, you know, Gulliver. Remember Gulliver? He was, wasn't the Lilliputians that he fell into with somehow? And the Lilliputians were little people, and they tied him down with these little strings. So he was all bound down by their little efforts. Well, those had been little strings that she had been bound down by her past, and they warranted her feeling unfairly treated. So she was she was unfairly treated. And she felt taken advantage of. Now, you might not think that has great implications, but it really does. Like, because she kind of popped one of those little strings and she thought, hey, I can wiggle my fingers here. Wait a minute, that feeling isn't coming from then, it's coming from the way I'm thinking right now about then. But I hadn't noticed it, that feeling of unfairness was coming from I'm thinking unfairly. It looked like I'm thinking about an unfair circumstance in my past. So she got there was a reversal of field, you know, and she got she had had the cart before the horse all those years, and suddenly she got the horse before the cart. You get where you have the horse before the cart, you're resilient. And where you have the cart before the horse, you're not. And you're either, it's black or white. It's black or white. You're either, you know, it's like being a little bit pregnant. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not, right? There's a difference. And you start to see how this works. You'll get the horse before the cart, because that's the way it really works. And you realize you've been pushing upstream. She was pushing upstream. She was creating dissatisfaction, displeasure, misery, because she had a misunderstanding. When she got the understanding corrected, the problem disappeared. So resilience is the instance, happens in an instant, wherein you see for yourself that your feelings are coming from your thinking about your life, not from the circumstances of your life. You see you see the truth. And when you see the truth, you get realigned with how it really works, and simultaneously you get over the misalignment and the misunderstanding of how it didn't work. Now again, that's happened to you countless times in your life, but it could happen even more. And the more it happens, the more resilient you're going to get. You have to, because it's just a misunderstanding that's been holding you prisoner. My wife says, I feel like I've been let out of jail and let out of that life of quiet desperation. We were sitting in a grocery store one day in the parking lot, and we were watching people stream in, and she says, look at them. She says, who's happy? Who's really happy? Who's walking around like they're really going to the grocery? You know, I'm going to the grocery in the United States, and I got money in my pocket, and there's food to be had in there. Ain't this great? Now maybe the little kids, but if you really watch the adults, they're bah humbugging it in to the grocery, you know, they're stressing out to the grocery. Like, who's having a good time, you know? And I know if I could do a little quick x-ray on every one of their heads in there, I'd see problems and outside-in issues and this, that, and the other thing, to some degree, being carried around in the minds, in the moment, and it looks real. It looks like that those things they're thinking about warrants the grind. And it really struck me. I thought, oh my gosh, you know, there's so much application, so much promise here for all of us to dash those thoughts. And you can still have the problems that you've got, the realities that we have. We do have to pay our bills. We do have to change tires on our car when the tire goes flat. We do have these things to do, but the price we pay for the outside-in thinking is greater than it's deserved. We don't have to pay a toll of our own psyche. You know, your psyche gives you. It will activate, your psyche is your mind, and it will activate the thoughts you're thinking, whether negative or positive. But it doesn't, whatever you put in there, you're going to get. So you want to, if you understand that, you get more picky about what you might put in there, because you just might wind up feeling it, and sure enough you do. So you get more out of like what happened for Valda. She didn't know that she was hurting herself with the unfair resentments that she was carrying for 10 years. She thought it was him that made her feel this feeling. When I started to see this, I'll never forget this thing that happened. I was working in a rape treatment center in Miami. And one evening, I had these two dramatic cases. I had one woman came in who had been, she hadn't been raped, but she was physically assaulted in the parking lot of her apartment. And someone grabbed her and tried to drag her into his car. And she defended herself, kicked him, got away, but was terribly traumatized by this, by the way, last week we worked with a group of wounded ex-Israeli soldiers came to Washington to work with my wife and I, because they want to teach this to the Israeli soldiers. So this has great implications for trauma, for our understanding of trauma. So this is one example. So this girl, I inherited her case, and she had been grabbed and escaped, but it really frightened her. Bless her heart. She was really frightened, and she got very troubled. She couldn't live where she lived anymore. So she calls her brother, "Please come." Calls her brother comes to take her home, and she stays the night with him, and she doesn't go back. She doesn't go back to her home. He lives on the other side of town, and in her brother's house, she had to have all the lights on 24/7. Because anything dark, any potential of dark, even in the day, the lights made her feel safer. So his electric bill was going through the roof. And he's complaining. He comes in and says, and she's terrified, she's anxious, she's overwhelmed with fear, and it's generalized. Like, she has it everywhere she goes. She feels like she could be taken advantage of. I had another case. These are all similar. We're all similar. But I had another case who a woman was raped. She couldn't give any description of her attacker. She couldn't remember anything about it at all. It was like she just blanked out. And so she came in, and she started to settle down, and she comes in, and because she couldn't give any description, she was afraid. This happened in a shopping center parking lot, and because of that, she couldn't go back to that parking lot. She couldn't go to any parking lot. So she tells me, she comes and says, I drove by the shopping center. I said, "Really?" She says, "Yeah." I says, how'd you do? She said, "I was okay." That's good. So I'm teaching her this. So she comes back in. She says, I went to the spot where I was attacked." I said, "How was that?" I was good. She says, "You know what else?" I said, "What?" She says, "I can remember what he looked like." I said, "Really? You should call the police." She said, "I did. I've already called the police. I gave them a complete description." I said, "Really?" She says, "Yeah." She says, she said, "I've been so scared of all men." She said, I thought all men were potential rapists like him." And she said, "When I saw his face, I realized it wasn't all men. It was just that one guy. And so all of my fear about all other men completely disappeared." I said, "That's good." She says, "It's wonderful." She said, "And you know what else?" I said, "What?" She said, it wasn't even about me." I had to smile. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "It was about him." He says, "He was so lost and so pitiful. He was such a pitiful person. He was so lost. She said, "It could have been anybody. It just happened to be me. And it's got nothing to do with me. There was no more personalization of it. It just left her, and all of her problems left her. All of her resilience came back. And she just got over it. And she just was fine thereafter." I had another girl who came in. She was absolutely a beautiful woman, and she had stitches hanging out of her face. She must have had 300 stitches in her face. And she came in, sat down, and this had just happened to her, and she'd gone to the ER and then they bring them right to me, and they do the rape kit at the ER. And so I looked at her and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to say to this person. And a policeman came in with her, and she says, I start to say something, and she motions like this. And she turns to the officer and she says, have you notified my husband about what's happened? And he says, yes, ma'am. As we speak, your husband is being brought here in a squad car. She says, it's amazing she's thinking of this. She says, would you go radio the policeman in the squad car and tell him to tell my husband that I'm fine? He says, yes, ma'am, I will. So he leaves. I'm very humbled to be here. You know, this work is so human. So she says, I said, what happened? And she says, she looks me square in the eye. She says, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Which is a really interesting thing to say when you think about it. She said, I was jogging, and I came to, I could go this way or that way, and I thought, if I go that way, I don't know, there's that patch of woods down there. This is in Miami. She said, sometimes there's people that hang out down around that woods. Oh, I'll be fine. She said, it didn't work out that way. She said, I was gang raped and sliced, and but she was philosophical. That'd be the best way you could say it. It was like, what did that, like the First Lady realized, what does this have to do with me? This is about a criminal action. And it wasn't I had no, she thought of it with this line. You could say she had, gang raped by minorities too. That was another thing. So gang raped, and she just naturally saw it. And it was so dramatic. I thought I wanted to follow her and just see how she did. She did fantastic. She was great. I'd call her and say, "How you doing?" "I'm doing great." She never even had the trauma in the first place. It just didn't happen. Now, she had the trauma, but she didn't have the trauma. See what I mean? She didn't have which can happen so easily to any of us, because we can all relate to the personalization, the angst, the why me, what's wrong with them. All those little thoughts are like little Gulliver strings, just tying us down. They feel important, they feel justified, we think about them, but we don't realize that they're deleterious to us. We just don't see their ways of thinking about what happens to us that we don't really, we do that thinking about that. It's not what happens to us that makes us think that way. It's we think about what happens to us that does that to ourselves. And removing the power of the outside world to determine your feeling and putting thought in there enhances, increases, maximizes, engenders resilience. Now, somebody asked me earlier, or in one of the questions, doesn't this engender a positive feeling? Well, of course it does. It's a feeling of peace, a feeling of welfare, a feeling of security. a feeling of, that's philosophical, you could say, a feeling that it's, has forgiveness in it. All these deeper feelings are all built into this truth. And we recommend them to people. You should forgive, you know. You should, don't hold grudges. This is all great advice, but we could even go beyond advice to understanding this dynamic. We would be, we'd have our ears peeled for resilience, for how it works. One of these physicians who attended this course said, I think I mentioned this yesterday, if I did, forgive me, but she said, I didn't know why people I love working with dying people, and I didn't know why they were so resilient until now. I thought it had to do with their circumstances, but it's not that. It's the way they're thinking about their circumstances. They've let go of the world as the power, and they've turned their attention toward how it really works, and that's why they're resilient. She says it's nothing to do with dying. It's just a good excuse to clear your head of everything else. She said, now that I understand that's what it is, I'm more resilient, and I'm 45 years old, and I'm not anywhere near death. She understood, she got eyes for resilience. She couldn't see it before. She thought it was something else. She quit relegating it to circumstances. And she saw it as a human, it's a gift. It's a gift. It's a power to think. It's not what you think. You can change your mind, and you can heal, and you can get over past traumas or grudges or things that have, open wounds. The open wounds of our psyche are it's time to stitch them up and have them heal. You look in this direction, you're going to be surprised at what new thinking might occur to you about those old wounds, because if they're seeping, if they're still bleeding, there's a misunderstanding underneath them that doesn't look like they are what they are. It looks like they're something they're not. And if you see what they really are, they'll be healed. There's instant healing. And that's got to be a great miracle of medical science, is instant psychic healing, instant psychological healing. Or slow. If you go slow, fine with me, but there's healing. You could get over anything because of how resilience works. It's not like you're just getting aligned with the science of how it works. And when you get aligned with the science, you get misaligned or diminished, or you get less invested in how it doesn't work. When you see how it works, you automatically see how it doesn't work. So there's an illogic to the outside in. And that's why on the diagram we put that big old bad, this guy. Because I mean to emphasize it, but imagine that in red. It's a really glaring red. And it means does not work this way. There's an illogic underneath our psychological dysfunction. Small, medium, or large. There's an illogic. And you've been you've seen the logic of it many times, but there are places where there's some open wounds. And if there aren't, that's great. But the biggest part of what we suffer from is like what Valda suffered from. It wasn't like she was a miserable and happy person. Quite functional, positive, moving on in life, but she didn't know she had this recurring trauma. And when it became known to her, she took stock of it, like, what's this doing in my head? She got quiet. I think she must have gotten quiet enough to go, what are you doing here? You know? You're not invited to this party. I've got a party going on in here, and you're an unwelcome guest. What you're bringing in, you're kind of seedy and stinky. And she said, I never noticed. I thought he was, you know, this memory was my buddy. I had my buddy, and now and then I'd tell him about, hey, look at this guy. Remember let me tell you what he did to me. And let me tell you how unfair that was. And she said, all of my friends would always say, that was really unfair. I can't believe he treated you that way. Shame on him. She says, yeah, shame on him. She didn't know that she was spreading germs. We infect each other all the time with stuff like this. And we don't notice that it's dispiriting or discouraging or taxing. It looks like we're bragging about how we survived, how we overcame. I even overcame something like that. So it looks like it's something to be proud of, but it's actually, it's a no thing in the first place. It's not a thing that can make you feel a way. It's a thing that, in your misunderstanding, looks like the feeling you're feeling, and in her case, you could say, what feeling might she be feeling? Let's say, unfairly treated? Does that sound all right? We're not saying she wasn't unfairly treated. She was cheated. She was taken advantage of. So we're not saying demyelation isn't there. So unfairly treated. This is a beautiful thing about how we work. It's not, I had someone that told me that, he said, I like this. He says, this is a lot better than I hope you can see this, unfairly treated. Sorry for my, he said, I like this because he said he had come up with the idea that there was an illusion, that the physical world was an illusion, or something like that. He followed some guru or something. He said the physical world's an illusion. So he said, my second wife, he's on his fourth wife now. He says, my second wife didn't appreciate it when I called her an illusion. And I said, well, yeah, I wouldn't appreciate that either. Like if we're not saying that there's not a world we're living in, but the world we're living in is made meaningful and experienceable by us through thought. It's through thought that happens. And so understanding and owning that 100% as to how that works, it's not an illusion that his wife was no illusion. But he said, I was really confused about that. So I dismissed her. I demeaned her. He said, I didn't realize it. And he said it caused a lot of problems in our marriage. So we're not saying that conditions don't exist. Physical conditions exist. But how we experience them, think about them, is how we think. That's how we experience life, is through thought. And it's not, it doesn't happen any other way. If you can take that as a paradigm and see that, you're going to be aligning yourself with the truth, and that's going to mean more and more resilience, because you're not going to be defeating your own resilience by the misunderstanding that your feelings are coming from somewhere other than your thinking. It's going to create a sense of integrity and synchronicity and belonging. You feel like you belong. Now, most of my life, I never felt like I really belonged. I felt like I was trying to belong. I wanted to belong. There was some great club that I hadn't really been given the admission standards of, that if I could just sort it out, I could be part of this community. But I didn't have the degree yet, or I didn't have the achievements, or I didn't have whatever. There was something between me and belonging. And so what did I do? I spent my life seeking approval. You like me? Could you like me anymore? Is there anything else I could do to get your approval? I wanted approval to get liked so I could feel like I belonged. And little did I know that I was setting up myself for the stress of disappointment, concern about what others thought of me, as if I could do anything about that at all. But I thought I'd give it a shot. I thought if everyone liked me, I would feel approved of, I would feel approval, I'm good. You see how the subtle misdirection of this thing sows the seeds of little stupid little misunderstandings like that? People go to their grave every day thinking things that are outside in, not knowing that they're thinking about things. It looks like so there was something in the way for me to feel the way I wanted to feel. And if I had that, then I could feel that way. So there's something, it looks like something out there could make you feel a way you don't want to feel, or something out there that could make you feel a way you do want to feel. And it doesn't work that way. There's an illogic in that rationale. There's an illogic built into the way we've been taught it works, and it's infected us all. And we're paying for it dearly. And it's time, the disease is over. We get it sorted, we don't have to suffer. We have to deal, there's things going on, but the suffering is not, it's not required. You know, they have like you go to college They have the base courses, they have the required courses. You got to take science, and you got to take biology, and you got, you know what I mean. There's the required courses, and then there's electives. Suffering is an elective. You don't have to take it. You could say, oh suffering, oh. I don't think so. But it doesn't look like, it looks like it's required. It's not required. It's an elective. It's a misunderstanding. It's not like you're choosing to suffer, because no one would choose it if they really saw, suffering, everyone would refuse it categorically. But it looks warranted, given our paradigm, we have a mixed paradigm going on here. And because of that, it looks just like those surgeons and those doctors that said, I'll get the nurses to wash the instruments and the maids to wash the aprons, but I'm not washing my hands. That's ridiculous. They didn't get the paradigm. So in our age, there's a disease called mixed paradigmness. Who suffers from that in here? Okay. How about you guys? Okay, I'm just checking. Teasing you, but we all think things that make us feel ways we don't want to feel, and we don't spot where it's coming from. So we've eliminated this down to one significant, discernible, practical, logical discriminator that will release us from a misunderstanding that we've lived with for centuries. Is it 12:30 that?
We just can adjourn anytime, but be back in 1 hour.
Oh, okay, so anytime, all right. It's quite interesting to live at this age where we can see something like this and take a new stab at our lives, rule out something that was we didn't know was having a deleterious effect on us, and begin to insightfully learn that it doesn't work that way. So, and to the question of when do children, when do you teach this to kids? In effect, really, we all already kind of know it. Kids kind of know it too. But if we could do a lot to not teach them to quit teaching them how it doesn't work. So, the healthcare profession could now embrace rather than putting this into people, you could sort of begin to see how to honor the resilience. Everybody's got it. And we could be more respectful of that power and more humane to help rule out how it doesn't work. More kind. We could be kinder. We could be more generous. We could be more heartfelt. We could be more humble. about, hey, me too, me too. So it's not like you would bring anything to bear to the child or the parents. I mean, really, who's further away from resilience, children or parents? Usually the parents, but not always. But sometimes the parents have accumulated a lot of outside-in misunderstanding, and that's what they want to beat into their kids. So it would help them to see more about, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's not such a good thing to really abuse my children with, spread the disease of misunderstanding to my kids. So maybe the parenting would be the first place, that would be to intervene and help the parents see and trust in the resilience of their kids. Kids got to grow up, they got to learn, they make mistakes. Now, some kids are difficult. I'm not saying they're not. Sometimes they're monsters. But many times you see that, but for their parents, they might be doing a little better, So you want to, in our research, we're starting to learn about what you call multi-problem families, multi-problem circumstances. So we've done some pioneering research in ghettos. And we went into ghettos and we taught the principals, taught how this works. And we got some surprising results, like dramatic drops in child abuse cases. Well, it's easy to see why, because the parents quit thinking that the kids' misbehavior was capable of determining their reactions. So the parents got more equilibrium, more poise, more patience. They got stronger. A dramatic drop in drug abuse. Well, it's easy to see why. Like, why do people use drugs? Well, they're using drugs to feel better. It's no mystery. They get addicted to something that gives them a relief, and then they take some more of it, and they get more relief, and they get consistent relief. So that's what we call addiction. It's just a misunderstanding of that something could do something for you, an agent could do something for you that would help you have well-being. Now, this doesn't mean all drugs are terrible, or sometimes people don't have pain, or whatever, but there's a misunderstanding about where feelings are coming from that makes addiction so much more tempting. And you're going to be less tempted in the misunderstanding that your feelings are coming from anywhere other than your thinking. That misunderstanding is going to be tempered and drop away, and you're going to find more ability to be present and respond and take things in. We found dramatic drops in crime, dramatic drops in poverty. But it all starts to make sense. If you can start to see this resilience factor, people that get discouraged and despondent, and they're really struggling, they're not good. They don't have it within them to show up, to know how to go about work. One of the women in the ghetto, there's a couple stories. So this one mother was very angry and very stressed out, and she had a bunch of kids. And so she's in the kitchen, and she's taught the kids, don't you step 1 foot inside this kitchen. This is my haven. I rule in the kitchen. You are not welcome. You can stand at the door and talk to me, but don't you step 1 foot in here. So she had her territory marked out. And she's taken this class, and the kids are at the door. There's 5 of them at the door yelling at her. She's yelling back. And then suddenly the insight hits her, wait a minute, can these kids cause my anger? No. I'm thinking angry thoughts about my kids. It strikes her. She's like, and it did something for her, like it was like, well, I never knew that before. It was a new thought. So the kids are yelling, and she's kind of stirring the macaroni or whatever she's doing, and she's, I think, thinking. So she gets reflective for a second, and she says to the kids, hey, wait a minute. And she gets real calm, see? And it kind of spooks the kids out, because she's like, what's she thinking? So she says, come in here. And they're like, oh, no way. I'm not crossing that line, man. I don't know what you got going on, but you're scaring me now. And she says, no, serious, come in here. And they're like, And they said, no, really, I want you to do something for me. I want you to get all the pots, all the pans out from all the cupboards. We're going to need a bunch of pans. And they're like, what? And, no, come on, we got a project to do. So the kids are like, I don't. So finally she convinced me, said, no, I won't take it out on you, believe me. I've got a good idea. So they come in and they drank, and the kids love this because it's banging around pans and stuff like that and searching through the back spots where you got pans. She says, we're going to make some cornbread. And I said, Mom, I don't want to make no cornbread. What are you doing? I said, no, it's going to be fun. She says, well, first of all, we're going to need some cornbread mix. Like, we don't have enough. So Bobby and Johnny, here's $20. Go to the grocery and buy all the cornbread mix they got. Really? Yeah. So they do. And then she gets what cornbread mix she's got, and she gets stirring it up, and they bake cornbread. And they spend the whole afternoon baking cornbread. And they got cornbread coming out their ears. They got more cornbread than they can eat. And then they start packaging up, say, okay, you take this over to Miss Johnson. She's a good neighbor. You do this, you do that. So they end up passing out cornbread for the rest of the afternoon. They have the best time. And then they wash it all up, and she really enjoys her kids. And the kids really enjoy doing something, contributing, helping out. Often that one little switch of misunderstanding disappearing and seeing where her anger was coming from. It just began to make a difference. Insightfully, it's just an insight. It occurred to her, oh, my anger is not coming from my kids. And it really started to unravel the other way. So all this data is in. We saw crime, poverty, drug abuse, child neglect, child abuse. They all changed as a result of people getting the truth about how they already function, and thereby seeing how they didn't function. Getting it solid, getting themselves corrected to how it works. I thought of something else I wanted to say. There's an illogic outside in, and it's not like we said last night. It doesn't appear at first to be what it is. It doesn't seem to be that big a deal, but it's revolutionary to see there's one way that it works. I'll do it this way. It's just one thing going on. We're thinkers, and our feelings are contingent upon our thinking. Our feelings are connected to our thinking, and you can't get away from it. You can't stop it. It's always there. Anytime you're going along, anytime you check and you ask yourself, does the way I'm feeling right now have anything to do with my thinking? There's only one answer to that, and it's yes. And that's really something that you can count on. You've got a psychological North Star. You've got a psychological truth that is always there to ground you, to help you. And it removes, it eliminates, it obliterates, it cancels out how it doesn't work. It does something to, because you're getting corrected to the way the system works. The system is it just works the way it works, but it engenders you to get in alignment with it. So you get out of alignment with it, you get all this stress and strain bound up, and you get realigned with it. You're either pregnant or you're not. It's black or white, and there's an endless direction in this direction. This isn't just a one-time thing, it's like a whole lifestyle. The more you see about this, the funner it gets to dodge the bullet of your misunderstanding. And you get freer and freer and freer and freer of what you thought was a legitimate thing that was in your way. Computer system, conditions, situations. Over here, this is evolutionary too. But it creates more thinking, more justification, more excuses, more on your mind. So the thing that is the big impact here is how much thinking does that take off your mind? As we go forward here, anything that's hitting you, being resolved in you, stitching up those open wounds, anything that's being cured or healed, it's taking things off your mind. It's taking things off your mind. How much does this take off your mind? How much does that take off your mind? We're kind of in a big fat reduction. We're taking the fat out of your thinking. How about that? This sounds good, right? You got fat thinking, you don't need it. So your mind will quiet down and you become more present to life versus thinking about it, worrying about it, fearing it, judging it, reacting to it. Your mind gets stiller and stiller the more mentally healthy you get, the more present you get. the better off you are. And you're dropping egotism, dropping reaction, dropping judgment. And it works for you. It's going to work great for you, I promise. There's no harm will come to you through dropping misunderstanding. Only welfare. We had a colleague, I'll tell you one other story and then we'll quit. We had some colleagues that I've been working with who are young and energetic movie makers. And they, in fact, if we wanted, there might be some way we could send you these blogs, but here's kind of a cool thing that happened. So they've been learning about this paradigm, and there was this horrible thing that happened in the world. In Nepal, there was this terrible earthquake, and it killed, I think, something like 20,000 people, 20,000, maybe 23,000 injured, maybe 16,000 killed. It wrecked centuries-old villages. It's the worst natural disaster in Nepal since 1936, worst earthquake. Everything it just ruined everything. It was so big, it dropped Mount Everest. Mount Everest is not as tall now as it was before this earthquake. It happened in late April. That's got to be a pretty big shakedown, don't you think, to reduce Mount Everest a few feet. So they go there, and they're wanting to teach this, and we're going to go over the implications this afternoon. And one of these implications, so I'm on the phone with them. So they go and teach this program. So I'm on the phone, say, how'd it go with this? It was amazing, amazing trip. I said, well, what was amazing about it? They said, well, for one thing, they kept wanting to hear about that one implication. I said, oh, you mean in our program? He says, yeah, that one implication. I said, what was that? It says, there's no other place to be. I said, they wanted to hear about that. He said, yeah, that meant so much to them. You have no idea. Once we mentioned it, that's all they wanted to talk about in every class. It spread like wildfire throughout the school and the organization. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no. He said, those first 3 sentences. And I said, well, what are the first three sentences? It's my program. Said that there's one specific place in time that you can see feeling being created from thought. It's not in the past or the future. This only exists in the present moment. And there's truth and wisdom in this precise moment. And he said, when we read that to people, it was a stopper. He said, do you realize that since the earthquake, there have been 20,000 aftershocks? 20,000 since April. So that's like almost every few minutes there's another aftershock. Some of them are small, some of them are medium, and some of them qualify as an earthquake. So they've had, I thought you have an earthquake, you have a few aftershocks and then everything settles down. It's not happening that way. It's continuing. He said, so people here are living, not only have their lives been completely destroyed, they've had family, they've had structures, all the services, the water, the structures, the buildings, everything has been horribly transformed. But they're having to go through it every day. The the re-experiencing of it, he said they found their protection. Because they didn't know that it was the memory of the big one and the fear of the next one that was creating their anxiety and distress and stress. And he said, when we read that, the truth of that, it struck him. He said that it doesn't come from that you're feeling coming from your thinking in the moment is the truth. And that really, and it's not coming from the past or the future. He said it was like they found the right safety, they found the safety zone in the present moment. And when they found that, all of their fear disappeared about the future, and all of their pain disappeared from the past. And he said it was like they just woke up, and they just loved it, and they were doing great. So I said, that's fantastic. Isn't that fantastic? I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? It wasn't that they were just right on the brink of getting the truth of that. So that's what we're going to talk about this afternoon. And we're going to go over them, and these implications are really important. They really are heartfelt. They're really very wisely written. I can't think of anything more truthful. I've never seen anything quite this truthful. I didn't write most, I edited them. They came from my wife. God bless her. She got this logic. I said, how are you coming up with these implications? She says, I'm just following the logic, Keith. I'm just following the logic. I said, okay, what's the logic again? Okay. Because I want to know, and I know you guys want to know. There's truth and wisdom in the logic of how we all function. And bring it on, you know. And so we'll go over it and go into some detail. But soak them up. Take them home with you. Read them again. I've got people that coach people with these implications. I've got them on my desk, and I read them to the people I talk to worldwide. I say, okay, that reminds me. Let's talk about flat earth thinking. It's all the same thing, but it's different words of talking about the same thing. So we'll cover those.